I would like to warmly welcome all of you for making it today to today's session. I actually just took a moment to look at how many of these virtual forums we've had so far. And then the last 3.5 years, this is the 24th occasion for people like you to connect, to exchange ideas. I always reiterate this isn't a webinar. So, yes, I will show you something that works for me, but I would like to have a dialogue with you about what works, what doesn't work, and see how we can advance with the topic of taming the chaos of change. A warm welcome to today's edition of the Change Does Matter virtual forum series. Today's title is When Knowing is Not Enough. About 2.5 months ago, I had a client discussion with a project I've been supporting for about 6 months. And my client said, that's my biggest challenge. I know what should be happening, but sometimes I don't have the courage to have the hard dialogues. And that is holding me back from doing anything about the change. And I know it's going on the wrong path, but I need to do something about it. So whilst I was exploring this topic with this gentleman, Peter, I said maybe my community, the Change Maverick community, could benefit from it as well. So as a little bit of an opening, I would love to show you some statements and invite you to nod or just show me that's not your case if you have your videos on, if you have ever got into these situations. So the first question I have, if you've ever been to a steering committee or like big program sponsoring meeting where the adoption numbers, the numbers of how many people buy in for a change, were different to what you actually showed in reality. The numbers maybe looked much more positive than what you could see amongst the people that you work with. If you say yes, just nod, and if no, then you can just let it go. Yeah. If you've ever watched the program, a change project, quietly disappear, drift, because the tough discussion, the real conversation never happened. I see a couple of thumbs up. I can tell you, I've had that so many times. Whilst I worked within a large multinational company and also as a consultant, I've been having the opportunities to work with different contexts, industries. This is not company specific of an issue. And the third one is if you ever found yourself rather avoiding the tough talk and raising smaller, safer issues, topics to talk about in these very important high-stake dialogues. Again, I can put my hands up. Yes, I've caught myself to it as well. When knowing is not enough, which is the title of today's session, is really about how do we get the courage to have high stakes, sometimes difficult dialogues with people often up above who influence our opportunities to keep contributing to an organization's plans and also keep growing. And if any of these statements, questions got a little thumbs up from you, then you are in the right place. I hope that I can make today's session, the 45 minutes, really valuable and practical for you. What I'd like to do today is, first of all, talk about the price of staying silent, the cost of silence that we pay. I'd like to show you a 3-step approach, very simple, but it's a good checklist for us to see, do we do it or not? And also talk a little bit about reading the room. In the call, I can see an emotional intelligent expert. Thank you, Juliana, for joining. But also with many of you, we've talked about this already. Do we have our own self-awareness to recognize what holds us back from really seeing what's around us in the room? And are we able to read it? Now, I'm not an EQ or emotional intelligence trainer, and that's not my objective today. But I did put one slide into this presentation deck to get us thinking about what we can do differently to get that courage. Again, just like a few minutes ago, I mentioned today's session is not a webinar, so I'm not going to teach and preach. I brought a case study to you. I brought some exercises for us to reflect on. And yeah, that's what you can expect today. In terms of who is talking, with most of you, I had the opportunity to interact already. With some of you, not yet. So my name is Margit Takac. I'm based here in Switzerland, and I'm a change management consultant. I've got over 20 years of experience with regards to change and transformation programs in large organizations. And today I see myself as the contributor to the dialogue to see how we can catalyze this progress when it comes to onboarding the right people and having tough dialogues. Again, thank you very much for joining. With that, let's look at a brief poll. I prepared a short poll for you to tell me what is it that you experience when you have high stake discussions along the way. I'd love to know what is a second. The news. Oh, okay, it's not gonna run, so that's okay. You can just write in the chat. I'd love to invite you to tell me if you have caught yourself doing any of these. Feel free to add various letters, but you can think of a high stake change meeting with the steering committee, with a leadership team, with your peers, with key stakeholders. It can be anything that you know that is really important for you to drive the change. And you quote yourself that, yes, the numbers up there told a different story to what actually you see is happening. What was your reaction? And just put in the chat what you quote yourself doing. A, was it that you ended up presenting the data as it was, not putting any caveats around it? If you had a KPI, a key performance indicator, you showed the number as per your system is suggesting. Or B, have you reframed it? So even though the numbers were not as good as you would like the leaders up there to see, you made it less frightening. C, if you raised a smaller, safer issue instead, you still talked about challenges along the way, but not the big challenges. And D, if you rather avoided the discussion, said nothing at the event, and you followed it up afterwards privately, or if anything else, the E, then please help me by writing your comments into the chat. So I see here a couple of comments coming up. So A, if figures support the topic, I find it easier to raise the discussion. I tend to agree, Andrea. If we have facts, sometimes it's easier to onboard even the toughest topics and issues because those are less arguable than just sharing perceptions and impressions about any project. I see here raising a smaller and safer issues instead. If any of you are similar to me, I'm not looking for conflicts and I like harmony at work. You probably also have that, just like the person writing here. I see here also E mentioned, such as addressed it in another more safe setting. Juliana, would you share what does it mean, safe setting? Having that tough talk in safe setting.
Yeah, sure. I think it's also similar to D in a way. But what I sometimes like to do, especially when we're like in a position, let's say as a maybe manager or somebody who coordinates different people, and like everybody has a bit of a different take on whatever needs to be decided. Sometimes when you talk about things like that in a meeting, um, I feel that it can be risky, like putting somebody a bit on the space. Like Team A has voiced this and that concern because of blah blah blah, and I know, for instance, that the director or whoever is not going to be happy about it. So I would like to be cautious about that and maybe ask Team A, just to stay with the example, first, what would you like me to confer to others? What do they need to know and when and how? And so maybe find a little bit of leeway or where we can wiggle into a safer space rather than like this, let's say, stage of like this meeting.
And I love what you mentioned about this because that's the third point I'd like to raise for us to explore together. Reading the room, if it's not the right place or the right moment, how do we still make sure that we don't drift away? And Irina kindly has said, yes, I have also let it go. And sometimes it's hard to return to it. It's almost like the momentum is lost. If only I had named the issue at that moment. Those things will happen, but let's see what we can do proactively to dare to name the issues. And thank you very much for the comments. Here I also see a comment around trying to find the allies with the senior team. That's exactly what I will talk about in the third team, about reading the room. Can we do anything before those big high stake meetings taking place so that we are not the only ones naming the big issue in the room. Thank you. Thank you for those inputs. Let's talk first of all. The first point I would love to explore with you is the cost of silence. I have been in my career in many situations where an hour, a day, a week later, I wished I named a certain issue with the key stakeholder. And I admit to you, I did not always have the guts to do it, but it did pay the price for it. And I still sometimes pay it. I'm not saying that I'm the master of always breaking that silence. We have to acknowledge the organizational context, what is allowed, because in some organizations, it's not allowed to confront with bad news. In some organizations, recently I've been working in the energy sector with a company where it's not like it's an unwritten rule. It's not okay to name an issue because the organization's culture, it's headquartered in Asia Pacific, one of the countries. You cannot challenge the authority of the above, whoever is there. So we have to be really tread carefully. In this section that I will show you, I'd like to share with you a case study of that company that I mentioned to you without naming the actual organization. It's in the electronic manufacturing sector, but I think it could be in any other sectors too. And I joined the program director. He asked me, Peter, to join him and help him because there were big issues. They knew things were happening. They were not happening maybe in the way they wanted, but they needed a bit of push. And he wasn't too sure how to play this safely, politically safely, and how to make it pragmatic when it comes to getting the right leaders on board, also from above. They were doing CRM, customer relationship management implementation. For those of you who might not be really familiar with CRMs, think of a software that allows salespeople, regardless of their location, regardless of the accounts they are managing, to enter updates about meeting clients, prospects, the progress, any blockers they identify, so that a global team can look at that data and see how proactively they can respond to any issues and even preempt some issues coming up. So in this company, the CRM, customer relationship implementation, was sponsored from above. And they said within 4 months, they would like to see at least 70% of the sales population, it's about 1,300 people in this organization, to use the new CRM system. And Peter, the program director, said, well, I will tell you, Margaret, it is at 34%. So more or less half of what the target was. He had the data because they did everything. We've explored in virtual forums together before. He had everything: the why, the what, the how, the training, the what's in it for me. Everything seemed to be done well, but above he couldn't really mobilize the active and visible executive sponsorship as often ProSci, the change management leading change management consultancy, suggests. He couldn't really mobilize them, and the momentum was lost. People didn't feel the pressure. What was the problem? That whenever he went into the meetings, the sponsor at the steering committee said, make sure that we look good. We need to show that we are making progress. It's better than nothing. And he said that in the dialogue, in the steering committee, often the comment is, yeah, we are on track with some headwinds. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the expression headwinds, but it's like a little bit like little asterisks, terms and conditions apply. We are on track. There are just little nuances. And Peter also said that he hasn't found the right way to convince the sponsor in front of the steering committee to show the real number, the 34%. And because of that, he assumed that that real conversation about how the strong sponsorship from above was needed never really happened. And the program team and the steering committee said, no, we are doing okay. They just didn't feel the problem. Now, my question to you here, have you ever seen this? Have you ever come across, maybe not with a CRM, customer relationship management implementation, but any project where the dialogue did not take place? The numbers were saying we are really lagging behind, but it didn't really take place. Please just unmute yourself and share with us. Have you ever come across a project where you had a similar situation?
I can comment. I have a live scenario going on actually these weeks that is very similar. That's about the company wanting to prefer or wanting to move to employ more internal employees than contractors. In a lot of countries, this is a thing now. There are legal pressures around this. And in my case, in my team, I do have some contractors who are bringing a lot of value. They have been with the organization for a while. They know the organization. They've got the network, and they are always in the front of introducing any new capabilities just because of their relationships and high level skills. And I find it almost impossible yet to involve internal employees because they are either juniors or they don't have those skills that I need to introduce new capabilities. And the conversation happens almost on a weekly basis that higher management expresses the need that, okay, I want to see internal employees in the new projects. I want to see internal employees presenting new stuff. And yeah, it's a really hard dialogue to have.
Mm-hmm. So it has to happen because I understand the directive is there. Let's leverage our internal potential and capability for the projects we want to lead. But in reality, you as one of the leaders to say we don't have that capability, maybe because of lack of
Yeah.
skill with junior people or lack of capability with yet not having that competence to do it. Any ideas that Dora could explore? It's a virtual forum where we think tanking together. So the directive is there, but it's hard to implement if they don't have the right capability to do it immediately. What are your thoughts?
We'll need to bring them on a journey. Just, I don't know, we'll probably have to try to find some training and we go along with them, move back a couple of steps.
So build a capability. Thank you, Perasa. What have you done around mapping those capabilities? Because you said, Dora, you like the idea, but they are not capable at the moment. What have you done to be able to show the skills gap, the capability gap so far to the leaders who keep saying this is the directive?
Yes, exactly. I have done this mapping. I even created a plan that in my calculation is at least 1.5, 2 years, to be honest, to bring up all the internals to the level that I would expect. But apparently that is too long a time. So the conflict arises from I need time, whereas management is like, no, you've got it like until end of the year, and I know that I don't think I can complete it until then. This knowledge transition.
Very
So
interesting. Very
yeah.
interesting. Thank you for sharing that. We can look at the CRM, but also about this one, the future
Mm-hmm.
capability that's needed and wanting to leverage more internal resources. I see Irena unmuted herself, so might have a 2 cents to add to this. Irena, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I do have an internal issue with this, but it connects with a national issue around internships and building what would you say, competency across the life course of an employee. And I think there's a real disconnect between management as to they're seeing the outcomes or the outputs, but not attending enough to the inputs. And often when you come under pressure, the things that get squeezed are training and development. The middle personnel in the organization get squeezed to invest time in the juniors coming along, and there's just a real gap. You know, we want the results, but we don't take the pain, and the organizational structure. It's like the management somehow disowns their responsibility to actually build the cohort. It doesn't just reside in the middle personnel, you know, in Juliana or those of us trying to actually operationally do the work. I think there's a disconnect there, which feeds into that cultural bit. So it's that, you know, that, yeah, that's what's going on in me. And it
Very, very
connects at a
interesting.
micro level and macro and nationally, I think, as well.
It's a beautiful example. So we know there is an issue, but knowing is not enough. We need to see what we can do about it. And maybe, hopefully, the three-step approach I will share with you and a little bit of a deeper discussion can give us some epiphany, aha moments about what we can do. I wish I could give you one magic solution for you to consider using. Even I don't know exactly. I see a comment here from Andrea. I'm lucky to be in an organization culture where it's okay to discuss the status truthfully. However, with some decision makers, it requires a pre-conversation one-to-one before it's raised with the rest of the leaders. Thank you, Andrea, for this comment, because I will show you the 3 steps that I think can help. But reading the room and knowing when is the right time and with whose alliances, as Irina mentioned a few minutes ago, that's super, super important. And Dora acknowledges, we want the results, but we don't want the pain. A comment from Irene. That is so, so common. And you say you steal it, but just copy it with pride, because exactly that's why we are here today, to see how we can inspire each other to see how to progress with this. When it comes to that situation, I showed that to you with these organizations I've been working with. The months have been passing by, and 6 months on, and the project is almost not talked about, is deprioritized. What I also noticed that the sponsor, who was really into this CRM implementation, was no longer believing in the PM or the program director's ability to do it, and even questioned the change of project team to do this. And retrospectively, the team that I've worked with said, I wish we talked about this. No one actually lied. So it's not like there were lies going around, but it's like something was in the room and we never named it. And I think that's probably one of the biggest issues, when the elephant is in the room. I found this picture a really nice one because, yes, there is a mess. We just don't see that elephant. Maybe everyone can see it, but no one wants to acknowledge there is an elephant that's ruining everything that we are doing in our organization. In my experience, it's not a matter of not having courage, because we do have courage. We are there, we are in the organization, the positions where we are, because we've got the courage to show, to challenge, to contribute. But sometimes it's a matter of the organization's culture. So I just came up with 3 possible reasons, and maybe you can acknowledge for your context if it's true. In some organizations, the culture is such that they appreciate if you put a caveat around it. When you put a little ribbon around the issue and you don't really name it exactly how it is. It's a little bit like having too much makeup. And that's what the organization expects from us. I have worked with organizations like that, so I can say that is possible. The second, and that V in inverted comma includes myself as well. When we are in an environment where we learn that it's okay to take the safer route, because if we risk naming that elephant in the room, we will pay the price. So again, you need an organization, corporate or non-corporate, that allows you to have a kind of a hall of shame, where it's not just hall of fame, who is the best, but also hall of shame, where you acknowledge the mistakes that have taken place. In one organization where I extensively worked for several years, in Malaysia, we had a subculture where they had literally on the wall a hall of shame. And I was shocked to see that when I was working in Singapore, where we only had the hall of fame. Best contribution, employee of the week or the month. They had a hall of shame, not with the names attached, but they put in large post-its acknowledging the mess that sometimes they caused. And they talked about what they can do about it. And I found that very courageous. But not all organizations have the guts to do it. And also the third is, it's not a matter just of courage, but sometimes initiatives fall apart and everyone wonders why nobody had said anything. Like it's, oh, you should have said that, you should have said that, you should have said that. And there's the finger pointing starting. So that's reality in all fairness. And we do pay that price for our silence. But the question is, what can we do about it? Now, this 3-step approach is not rocket science, but I think it might be an interesting one for us to think about the CRM situation, the case study that I brought forward with the recent project I worked on. The first one is, of course, name the elephant, name what is real. This one is interesting because it's actually acknowledging what's happening. And as in the chat, I've seen that as well. Using data and evidence can help us with seeing, look, that blurriness in the room, that's the elephant. And an example that we ended up coming up with the program director of this initiative is just using these sentences. Adoption is at 34%. By now, we want it to have 70%. It's almost like making the statement as factual as possible. That's the first thing, acknowledging the facts and the data. I asked Dora, leveraging her example, is if she has already that gap analysis, and she said she does, and she even have a how to correct that path plan, which takes longer than some of the leaders want in her organization, but she's using data as well already. The second one, once you have the facts and evidence, then you need to create an opening. Andrea mentioned in her organization, as long as you prepare the key stakeholder or stakeholders to have tough dialogues, it's okay to have open discussion. But in the case of the CRM with Peter, we said, let's just use something like, I'd like to ask what's happening? What is causing this? Can we have 10 minutes around this? Because imagine a steering committee meeting filled with lots of agenda items. If you ask for a micro commitment and you don't blame, you don't finger point, but ask what could be the root causes, you make people part of the resolution of that problem. So in the case of Dora as well, I understand the directives saying, no, we don't have 1.5, 2 years to build that capability. Then let's ask them why don't we have it, and what can we do about it? Because then we make them part of the solution. Dora, you might have already asked that, and I will give you the chance to tell us as well. And the third one is, so first name the elephant, then engage people in talking about the root causes, and then eventually starting to talk about possible solutions, and ask for one small commitment. Because if we do that, they will feel part of the solution, they will feel a stake. Now, let's be realistic. Steering committee, high-level leaders, they don't have hours to dedicate to us. But if you find one commitment in the next 2 weeks, this is what you will do, I will do, that's a contribution that we can build on. Very briefly, to show you in the CRM project, this is the kind of comment Peter was using. He admitted it. So we're making good progress. Adoption is growing steadily. It's still all true. And there are some pockets of resistance that we have to deal with, but overall we are good. That's how he said they were communicating, and he admitted it. But instead of that, using the 3 steps, he can choose to use the numbers, as I showed in the previous slide, open the dialogue to talk about what is driving this, what can we do about this, and then ask them for one small commitment. Now, I know this is a bit of a theory, but I love to leverage the collective wisdom of those who are here today. And what I like to do is to talk about reading the room and think about which step feels hardest and why. And in these Slido, just add your comments, as many comments as you'd like. Welcome back. A short think tank, but I can see already on our website Slido that a lot of you have commented on it. So with your permission, I'm just going to put the link in so you can add your comments if you still have any and you lost the link. Let's look at some of the comments, because there are some really practical tips and also a diagnosis of which of the 3 steps are a bit more challenging. So I can see here number 3 seems to be the hardest. That's the anchoring the next step. Someone is writing, my favorite question to ask at the end is, what are we and what are you going to do about this? But I also saw a comment here, which is, anchoring is hard. I want my boss to help me with that at the next ExCom, executive committee meeting. So really getting that alliance is really important. For the number 1, which is naming it, and I find it hard to name the issues at times because of wanting to stay politically correct, and I think so many of us can relate to this. We want to keep growing, we want to get promoted and be seen. So I need to make peace with that first and see if I'm mentally ready. I also saw a comment here where someone said, Juliana said we need to get mentally ready, and that's what I will do by talking with like-minded people like at this forum, so thanks. That's really, really important because we need to have the guts to have this. I see a comment here. I love the most the comment Irina shared. We want the results, but we don't want the pain. And I want to find a way to make my stakeholders realize this. It's a little bit like putting a mirror in front of even key stakeholders, senior stakeholders. Here I see a comment, I will find someone who can help me name the elephant louder. So maybe you see the elephant, but if someone else around you, maybe your boss or another stakeholder, do say the same, it can help. Being transactional without being too rational. That's interesting. Too rational. Can someone unmute themselves and tell us what do you mean by this?
Yeah, sure. Oh, I noticed I didn't mute myself in the first place, so sorry if I coughed or anything. Yeah, that was a comment by Irene, and yeah, it's. I mean, Irene, please correct me if I'm wrong, but it's mostly about like stating the facts and being neutral, being objective, without making it a personal matter, or let's you could even say making it too emotional. And I say that as an emotional psychologist. So there's a whole different layer of like separating the facts from who we are as people.
Well, I'm glad you bring your psychologist occupational hazard into the discussion, Juliana, because exactly that's what we need to take care of. Feeling that psychological safety to dare to speak up. And by using the data, hopefully we can somehow differentiate the two, the facts and the evidence and how we might feel or others. And this one I've read already. Following a bottom-up approach, gathering evidence and data can help. Step 3, as sometimes we also need to identify what we are not going to deliver in order to deliver what is the most important, so that individuals will not be overwhelmed and can be comfortable to commit. This is really important for step 3. Make it as easy for them to say yes. Make it friction free. Something, if that's ask assistants to find a 15-minute discussion, do that, because they already feel part of that important dialogue. I find it difficult to move the anchor commitment along outside of face-to-face. Yeah, that's actually very true. Over the last several years, COVID and even before, virtual interactions made it harder to read the room, and that's not going to change much. So let's acknowledge that will remain a challenge. But hopefully with the group and with some of these practical ideas and diagnosis of what might be challenging, this will get much easier. Now, I'd like to just ask you to write into the chat, what is one conversation you will approach differently this week? What is your step 1? The 3 topics we talked about is the price of silence we pay, and either for a career or for a change progress. The 3-step approach, which is naming it, opening the dialogue, creating an opportunity to connect and anchor it with an action. Or it's about reading the room. As in the chat, we also saw, some of you said, before the meetings, create the chance to talk with key stakeholders so that this can be brought on board constructively. So I'd like to invite you to write your answers. What is the one conversation you will approach differently, and what would you like to do next? What's your step 1 based on what we discussed about high-stake dialogues? Any comments? I would warmly welcome about that. Whilst I'm waiting for responses, I just wanted to share with you that if today's dialogue triggered interest in you, if you'd like to see how you can find structure to deal with difficult situations, change situations, then I would like to invite you to look at my website and the Change Confident Academy. It's an 8-week-long course with short video snippets of 20-25 minutes per week. With group coaching sessions, you get workbooks, templates, and quizzes as well to make it a little bit more fun. In today's age with AI, I feel that most of the things you can consult your specific AI applications on. I believe what this additionally gives is the opportunity to think together, just like today, but about specific programs that you are leading. So it's up to you. I invite you to check it out and see if it can benefit you along the way. If this is something interesting, feel free to use the QR code or simply check the link in the chat. I've had several people, leaders, and change practitioners benefiting from it. You're welcome to join if that's relevant to you. But as we conclude of today's dialogue, I'd like to just recap what I promised you we would be doing. We said we're going to talk about the cost of silence, show you a 3-step approach to deal with it, naming it, creating an opportunity to have a dialogue about it, and then anchoring it with an action. And we would also talk about how to read the room and really manage this along the way. I appreciate your comments and thank you very much for a few takeaways showing up in the chat. Irina says, use the one-on-one conversation with the line manager to anchor commitment along. And thank you for sharing that. One small step hopefully helps you move the needle moving forward. As a closing note, for those of you who might not be familiar with my work yet, I invite you to get a copy of my book, either the the Kindle book or the audio book available on Spotify. Listen to the stories where I share with you the challenges in different countries I've experienced, but also what we did about them to bring people on board. And you're welcome to check also, of course, the online course if it's relevant to you. As always, my closing note would be around the quote that really resonated with me about 10, 15 years ago and still does. When it comes to managing change and resistance, we can firmly and comfortably remind ourselves to the smart words and the wisdom of Maya Angelou, who said that people will forget what we said and what we did, but they will never forget how we made them feel. And as we are dealing with that elephant in the room, let's see how we can stay congruent to our values and stay authentic and still have those high stakes, sometimes difficult dialogues. Because yes, knowing is not always enough. And that's why you joined today. And I appreciate you making the time to think tank together about what we can do differently to be even better. I look forward to seeing you at the next virtual forum, which will take place after the summer period in September. And I will keep you updated about the details shortly. Thank you so much for joining today.